I'm honored to be with you tonight and to welcome Governor John Corzine to our Florham campus. As many of you know, the Silberman College of Business Professional Development Program has held forums with such esteemed executives as Dennis Stigl, and former CEO and President of Verizon, Paulo Tombasi, CFO of Novartis, and Tom Tinko, Controller and Vice President of General Motors. I found one of the most rewarding aspects of this lecture series is the speakers' unique perspectives, each describing events through their lens of their own experience and imparting that knowledge to the students here at FDU. Cultivating the leaders of tomorrow is an important part of the university's mission, and there's no better way than to do that by hearing from the leaders of today. Tonight, we're pleased to be joined by a leader with a wealth of experience, not only in the business world, but also in politics and in government. John Corzine was the CEO of Goldman Sachs from 1994 to 1999, a New Jersey United States Senator from 2001 to 2006, and governor of the state from 2006 to 2010. He possesses a unique perspective upon which we will reflect on his life and on his career. Following his remarks, the governor will open the floor to questions from students. Dr. Gwen Jones will moderate the discussion, so please stay seated and raise your hand to ask questions that you might have. Now please welcome and offer a very warm welcome to John S. Corzine. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Sheldon. That is very nice of you to have me here tonight. I am really pleased to be with all of you. Nothing gives me greater joy than talking to young people who are setting about establishing their directions in life, and hopefully we'll get to the questions. I think you all, you're in for, I hope, something that's interesting, but I want to be factual. I haven't had a mic in my hand since I left politics about 5 years ago, so it's a little dangerous for you. You know, we're a little out of practice and we might work on it. But in addition to Sheldon, I want to say thank you to Matthew Difkovitz, who used to work on my campaigns. Terrific guy. Used to write my speeches. They were a lot better than what I will do. You have a great provost in Peter Woolley, who used to give me all the bad news on the polls that we would have coming out in races over a period of time. And lastly, I want to say thank you to an individual who has really reached out and made my relationship with FDU a growing one and one very special. That would be the indomitable Ruthie Byrne. If you don't know, she works on the public relations of the university, and she does one hell of a great job. And she was married to is married, excuse me, pardon, one of the most terrific people who ever governed this state. And if you study how the world worked, Brendan Byrne did more great things for our state, I think, than anyone. And he had a great sense of humor. And one of his remarks that he always told after he was governor was, you'll know when people have forgotten you when you can drive down the turnpike and they wave at you with all 5 fingers. Well, I want Ruthie to tell Brendan when you get home tonight, I got through the Lincoln Tunnel with 5 fingers. But when I got to the turnpike, there was one of those folks that had 1 finger on the way. So I'm not yet in the same category as he is about where we are. But Brendan was a real icon of what it takes to be a leader and to do great things. And if you get a chance, find out what he's doing. Anyway, My goal tonight is to offer a little bit of a personal perspective on building a career that I hope will be helpful as you think about where you're going to go as aspiring business professionals and ultimately leaders. I'm not going to be talking about politics. I don't want my comments about victory and defeat or success and failure to seem defensive. It's the way the real world works. And I certainly want to stay away from the self-promotional part. And inevitably, when you're talking about career building and what you're doing, you're really talking about lessons of life. And so those things are very closely aligned with each other. And so my reflections will tie to that, and I think my title of my remarks sort of captures that. Let me say, it's unfortunate, but there's about 7 decades of perspective on this now, and I hate to admit it, I've seen a lot of things, and my life has been very blessed, and it's been very exciting. And I've tried to carry a sense of optimism throughout my career as I've faced off with both success and failure, and I'll try to talk a little bit about that tonight. I will say that, as in anybody's life, it has not been a straight shot to my dreams. There have been some periods that have seen some pretty stiff headwinds. And those particular periods in one's life require resiliency and persistence. Now, my wife, who's sitting in the front row, Sharon Corzine, would say I'm just plain stubborn, that we like to fight our way through things, but resiliency is an important characteristic in how you build careers, how you deal with the events of life. And there are some rough spots, and I've learned that you have to deal with those. And I have a phrase, I'll come back to it later, buckle up. Even with the bumps, some periods of my life have been seen by some as relatively, if not unqualified, success. I became the youngest senior partner of Goldman Sachs in the modern era of the firm. I got the honor of leading 10,000 people in a firm that many believed to be the best in the field. Its field, and recognized, which I was most proud of, as one of the 10 best places in the country to work. We did that 3 out of the 5 years that I was there. Goldman had exceptional results in that period of time, both for its clients and certainly for its owners. And we had a chance to build out a business strategy that enhanced our service to our clients and reached out across the globe. Now, on the other hand, after my defeat for re-election as governor, I failed in an attempt to, as a private equity investor, to turn around a struggling firm and one that had a weak and deteriorating franchise. That defeat was not easy. Defeats aren't easy, and they are quite painful. And let me say, as you've heard in other contexts, I've been rich and I've been poor. I sure the hell prefer the former, and I can say the same thing about winning. So as you begin your career, set off on a course towards achieving success, just as you would as a parent, an athlete, or anyone pursuing any life objective. Success is a good. As you start, understand generally what your objectives are, accepting that as your life matures, so will your goals. They'll change. But keep asking, how will I judge myself? What are the goals of my career and my life? It's perfectly reasonable to ask. Is wealth, is power, recognition? Do I want to be an innovator? Or do I want to spend my life helping others and raising up others? Great questions. Recognize that sometimes the objectives that you choose or we think we want come with costs and sacrifices that we're not prepared to accept. Not always do what we think we want become easily achievable. But hard work, preparation, embrace of a little risk, and a little bit of luck, a lot of things can happen in your life. And it's really important that you know yourself when you're answering those questions. And when you take that on, stretch your objectives a bit. Because if you come up a little short, you're still doing really, really well. Go for it in life. It makes a difference. Now, the pursuit of our aspirations should always be tempered by how the outcomes are achieved. Certainly, success in a career is a good thing, but real success comes when it's achieved in the context of excellence. How we get to where we're going matters. Excellence requires that ends and means be aligned through the character of the actions that lead to the desired results. Winning at all costs, it isn't worth it. It isn't acceptable. Integrity is fundamental. In fact, the pursuit of long-term success sometimes requires that you step back and accept that the costs of winning in the short run may have too high a cost, and it may contradict what you think is right and wrong. Those are the times you have to turn away. My political life was filled with many, many choices that were sometimes very hard to choose, whether you thought you wanted to go that direction. Knowing what is right and wrong in your own mind, your own heart, allows you to get through those times. And by the way, across the business table, the same kinds of choices come to the fore. I try to think of an example. Imagine how the engineers and the management at Volkswagen came to their decision to use deceptive software to evade emissions tests so that they could sell more cars at a given point in time. Short-term success compromised the long-term integrity of a great company. In short, excellence and integrity must be pursued hand in hand with our desire for success. In fact, one of the most common business principles, I know it's true at Merck, I know it was true at Goldman Sachs, I think it was at J.P. Morgan, a lot of great places. If we provide the best products, if we provide the best services, then our company's success will follow. It's the same for your career. Excellence will set the foundation for your own success. Now let me share a few thoughts on defeat and failure. As I noted, while there is no joy in the outcome, it must always be understood as a possibility in any pursuit. And in fact, without some risk of failure, there's almost no chance of actually getting to a positive conclusion. Mistakes will happen. I'll speak more about risks in a few moments, but events don't always go as we planned, and it is absolutely essential that we learn from those issues ourselves as we go forward. How we address those mistakes, how we address defeat, big and small, really will distinguish whether you're a real winner or whether you're a defeated person. You have a pretty famous alum around here. She's a Republican. As you may know, I'm a Democrat, named Peggy Noonan. And she said in one of her columns, it's everything after the blunder that makes the story great. And she was talking about the Detroit Tigers pitcher, Armando Galarraga. You may know this story. Guy pitched to 26 batters and retired them all. And then on the 27th, the last out for a perfect game, the first base ump blew a call. Just absolutely blew the call. And after watching the video replay, the umpire knew he'd screwed up. Went to Galarraga and told him so. That didn't restore the perfect game, but to the umpire's amazement, Galarraga said he understood and he accepted the apology. The point is, and Peggy was right, what really matters is everything after the blunder. You gotta go forward. So when bad things happen, keep in mind that the greatest test of one's character is how you deal with those things. Errors in judgment, shortfalls in skills, poor execution or underestimation of circumstances all happen. They're normal in life. Probably seen that in papers you've written or tests you've taken. But understanding the causes of the situation that you're dealing with offers you the opportunity to reset your direction and ultimately achieve recovery. Honest self-appraisal, serious postmortems blended with a little stubbornness will allow you to come back from almost any circumstance. But this is absolutely a must. Giving up is not an option, just not an option. And that isn't stubbornness. Starting over is an option and something everyone should be willing to do. By the way, the interactive learning process of trial and error around mistakes can and should inform our lives and our actions as we go forward. I sometimes tell people I had two rather limiting jobs before I started my 25-year career at Goldman Sachs. Limiting is a nice way of saying they were boring as hell. And I was looking to get out before I got in, essentially. But they taught me a lot about what I liked and what I didn't like in the business world, in the business place. First of all, it made it absolutely clear that you want to love, you want to like what it is that you do. It makes going to work a lot more fun. And a little more concretely, a little tongue-in-cheek, I learned that yelling at subordinates isn't a great idea for getting the best out of them. In a more current example, Elon Musk today is working on one of the great projects that men are taking on anywhere in the world. He's trying to put satellites in space with recoverable engines. And he may have a lot of money, and he may have a lot of will, but it's a very tough task. And he's had multiple experiences. Some of them worked, not many. Many haven't. But he's keeping on trying, and he's keeping on trying because he's learning from the mistakes and stepping forward and making what he believes will be a huge difference to mankind in the development of space, exploration, and travel. Giving up is not something that Mr. Musk understands, and I encourage you to make sure you ingrain that in everything that you do. Knowing our objectives and being patient in periods of frustration is clearly a part of building a successful career. In all contexts, all of us need to be motivated and stay motivated. To that end, this is another point I feel strongly about. Ambition is a good thing. Being motivated encourages us to attain recognition for our work, to be financially rewarded for the contributions and efforts we make, and provides an expanding forum for us to pursue things that we care about, that we believe in, and to promote the kinds of ideas and sometimes innovation that you want to give. It's natural to have motivation to build a satisfying career. It's good. It's not bad. And I hope that some people will even take it to the point that they recognize that it needs to be a necessity in life. I know from my Goldman experience that without ambition, there would have been very little momentum in my career. I would not have been able to make contributions either to my firm or to the clients we tried to serve. I know that in the Goldman environment, there were plenty of high-quality people. And without a little extra nudge of ambition, I'm not sure you'll be able to accomplish the ends that one makes. When I became senior partner of our firm in 1994, there was at least 5 competent and competing peers for that position. They were good people, they did well, but without ambition, there was almost no chance that I would have crossed that threshold. Just like that in public life, there would be no real ability to be an elected official. The fact is that there are always good people, some of them quite formidable in the electoral context. And without ambition, it's very, very hard for an individual to get across that threshold. So I don't think that you should think of it as a problem. It should be thought of as a good. And by the way, ambition goes beyond just yourself. It needs to be channeled for the benefit of others. It is important that you create an ambition about the people that you work with. At Goldman Sachs, we had a desire to move to a public company, and without having others see that strategically, see that for the safety and security of the firm, the ability to succeed in future years, that would not have been taken on. So it's part of the process of getting to good results. I promise you that ambition in the political sphere requires that you have a view on a platform of things that you care about and that you're willing to pursue and take the heat when people don't talk about, don't take to the suggestions. Talked about Byrne, who introduced the income tax in the state of New Jersey. Absolutely a necessity for our society to be able to go forward, to educate our children, to provide health care, to do the things that were necessary. Wasn't exactly popular, but you had to have ambition and view and vision to see through, to get to the conclusion of those things. So ambition is a good thing. There could be too much of a good thing, though. You have to make sure, as I said, that it's channeled for more than yourself. Unconstrained, self-promoting ambition certainly can end badly and has throughout history. Colleagues with Hellenic or Napoleonic complexes can do great damage to their organizations, and often to society and ultimately to themselves. And I hope that we look at ambition as a positive and make sure that you can control the ends. I think Sheryl Sandberg said it pretty well when she said, lean in. Whether you're a woman or a man, using your talent and ambition can change the world. That brings to mind another ingredient to career success, which I truly, truly advocate, and that's called teamwork. No one does anything by themselves in life. I promise you, I wouldn't have gotten here if my wife hadn't driven me tonight. And writers have editors, surgeons, they're supported with nurses, presidents have aides and counselors. I think you get the picture. Success is easier when there are mentors to coach, geniuses to create ideas that make others look good. It's great to have partners to work with. It makes you feel like you're something more than just what you're doing. My life has been blessed with great teammates. A whole bunch of them are here tonight, and I'm very proud and happy that you're here. I know that any success I've had is because others have made it possible. I want to talk about a special one since we're here in a business school. I had a partner at Goldman Sachs named Fisher Black. Some of you probably know the Black-Scholes option model. It's pretty famous, and Myron Scholes ultimately won the Nobel Prize in economics for the creation of it. Fisher, unfortunately, had passed before the award was given. He was really, really a bright man. And like all of you, I had to take a finance course at the University of Chicago. And unfortunately, I got to take Fisher's class. He had one problem. He couldn't talk in English. He only talked in equations. And I was okay in math, but not so good. And then he asked for us to write papers. And so I wrote a paper, and he gave me a C. And I don't know whether many of you know, in graduate school, it's not a real good idea to get a C. And it's the only one I got, fortunately, but it was real. Fast forward 12 years, and Bob Rubin and I and a couple of people decided we thought Fisher Black would make a big contribution to Goldman Sachs by putting his econometric models and his quantitative models to work in our risk management area. And he did really, really well. He was a very decent gentleman. But he was up for partner in, I think it was 1988. I called him into my office and I asked him if he remembered the paper that he graded sometime like 1975. And Fisher said, no, I don't really remember that. I said, I bet you don't. And I asked him whether he knew who had to sponsor him to be partner. Fisher made partner and did great things and was a wonderful man and a great friend. Perfect example, though, of someone who made somebody else, someone with a whole lot less skills like me, look really good in the world that we tried to pursue. It's really one of the more vivid examples of how I think we should think about how we work with teammates. And so don't forget that as you go forward. It's really important. Earlier I spoke about risk, and I implied it's embedded in all we do. And I also believe it's a necessary ingredient in all we pursue. Like ambition, though, too much risk, too much of a good thing can be trouble, and you have to be careful with it. But without risk, our capitalist system wouldn't function. Advancement of our society wouldn't move forward. I used the example Elon Musk before. And I think most of you have probably heard of Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations, and he talks articulately about how risk needs to be embedded in the advancement of our society. Same will be true in your careers. For my life has been filled with what I believe has been measured risk. I don't believe, and I've never felt I was a gambler. And I have understood risk from my earliest days. Many of you probably don't know, but I grew up on a farm. My father was a sharecropper who took a lot of risk. He didn't actually quantitatively look at it, but he faced risk every year when he sowed the seeds in the spring, nurtured the crops in the summer, and then prayed like hell there wasn't an early frost. So when he took the corn out, that it would be there. Its success in any given year was filled with risks that he couldn't control. Certainly the weather. He also had to deal with bankers' willingness to lend him money so he could buy the seeds to put the crop in. And whatever the corn crop price was when he went to sell it was a risk. And so you had to live with it. He knew it. When I began my career in finance as a trader, and had a lot of fun, thought it was a great job, still do. But I knew then that governments, companies, and our clients, all of them change their preferences from day to day, change their policies sometimes in governments, and it changed the value of the securities that I bought, I sold, I held. It's just part of the deal. There was risk attended. There were good days and there were bad. Fortunately, there were more of the former. But that said, it didn't happen for everyone that was in it. Risk was a part of going forward. When I chose to pursue public service, the odds of my succeeding as an unknown political novice were minimal. Some would say, maybe some in this room, I'm looking at some of you in the eye, would say that political talent was equally minimal. Just for perspective, the Wall Street Journal reported that there hadn't been a senatorial candidate with a beard elected since the early 20th century when I first ran. One of my friends at the Star-Ledger wrote that Corzine's about as interesting as watching a log flickering on TV during the shutdown period over Christmas. You guys probably have figured that out already tonight. To say the least, the electoral success was not a given. There were obvious risks of failure and, in some ways, even maybe humiliation. As it turned out, with a little bit of luck and a lot of hard work by a lot of people, incredible amounts of preparation, combined with that stubbornness that I talked about, and a real purpose to the platform that I advocated, elections were won. And I was honored, really honored, to serve the people of New Jersey for nearly a decade as opposed to their United States Senator and Governor. Unequivocally, these were the best years of my life. I felt like I did more for other people through that role than any other way that I could give back. As I noted earlier, I believe those risks are like ambition, but they're necessary, they're inherent in every endeavor, whether it's politics or business. And 5 years ago, I want to be direct about this, 5 years ago I took on a struggling corporate franchise. My first objective was to turn it around, to give it health, to give it vitality, to go forward. I wanted to do that in a way that if we were successful, that I could build up my capacity as a philanthropist in the remaining years of my life. I believed, I recognized the risk. I was confident that if I surrounded myself with good people, that if I worked out a good plan, we could turn the tide. Regrettably, I was wrong, and the consequences have been anything but pleasant. And unfortunately, sometimes defeat, it's not just the individual that has hardships. It's been disruptive and painful for many innocent bystanders. I don't like that. Now, I'd like to address it even a little more fully, but given the circumstances, I think people will understand that I'm going to have to stop there. Someday I hope I can speak directly to this issue fully. It's important. So let me acknowledge, not all risks taken working out. As said before, learning from our mistakes is really important. It makes us stronger. And I can tell you that maintaining a purpose in life is the important ingredient of pushing you through. So let me attempt to tie together some of the threads of the observations that I've made on objectives and success, ambition and teamwork, on resiliency and risks. To that, I'm going to refer back to the headline of tonight's discussion, Life with a Purpose. The purpose question is the core of who each of us is, whether as an aspiring person or a governor. Our purpose in life informs our choices. Should you, as yourself, as you choose your first step in your career and the subsequents, it's the choices that you make. If you accept the premise that people have free will, and I do, most of us will assess how we're doing in life by how we align our choices with that purpose. We are responsible for our outcomes. Again, we must decide what is important: family, wealth, recognition, doing good for other people. All of them are okay. All of them can be pursued at the same time. Sometimes you have to prioritize in that context. The examination of our purpose will give us a standard to assess how we're doing in life. It'll help us set those priorities. And since we don't control all of life's circumstances, purpose will give us a basis to react to the world as it is, not how we want it to be. I will use the simplistic but true term, life is a journey. Purpose gives a compass for us to deal with that journey. Let me tell you two final stories, and then I'll start taking your questions. How purpose combines with how your choices might work. I grew up in the year of the Vietnam War. Graduated from college in 1969. And in those years, as opposed to how we're handling manning our armed forces, there was a draft. And like many students on campuses in that period of time, I had a deep and abiding critique for the war in Vietnam. Didn't feel right to me. Maybe I was just young and youthful and not thinking. And you had a choice. I had a chance to go to graduate school and do some interesting things, but I got what some of the old-timers will know, a 1A notice, and told me to show up at the draft board and take your physical. And I did, and I passed. And you had to decide then. And many of my friends had decided, particularly ones that were deeply opposed to the war, chose to go to Canada or do something that avoided the service. And I just couldn't do that. I couldn't look my father in the eye, the values that I had grown with. And as opposed to getting drafted, I was really stupid. I signed up for the Marine Corps. But the point is that the purpose in life ends up dictating and surrounding how you make decisions in life. It's important to allow that to happen. The last thing, the last example, is a little more painful in a lot of ways. It goes back to that buckle up comment I said. And it also is representative of the fact that you don't control all circumstances in life. Could have controlled this one a little better, maybe. When I was governor, 2 years into my term, I was moving from Atlantic City to a northern New Jersey venue. I was having a staff meeting, turning around, talking in the car, and I didn't have my seatbelt on. And unfortunately, the car spun out of control on a rainy night, and I ended up having a really serious outcome. Fortunately, everybody else was secure. I was in an induced coma for 11 days. And I was really lucky because the centrifugal force forced me around in the car. Whole point was I recovered. I had great people at Cooper Hospital in Camden. But I had to decide how you would use this as a good thing. Well, there's not much good that was coming out of this. I was catching plenty of heat from people who were critical, and rightly so, because the governor wasn't setting a good example. But my staff and I decided that we would offer ourselves to the National Transportation Safety Board to make a public service announcement. And I don't know, some of you may have seen it. It was actually probably one of the most watched and those days tweeted public service announcements. I went on TV and said, my name's John Corzine, governor of New Jersey, and I should be dead. And showed putting on a seatbelt, and then they flashed the car, and then requested that everybody take the steps to try to protect themselves in life. Made a difference. I don't know how many people's lives it saved, but it got people's attention. Probably get more feedback on that today than I do even my turnpike expenditure program that I was trying to do. My point is, if you have a purpose in your life, if you have values that you then apply to the things that you believe in, you can make a difference. And I hope that that's one of the things that I'm conveying to you tonight. It's really important. So, as I've said, buckle up, go for it, succeed, and by the way, have a little fun in your career too. Let me ask your questions, please.
Well, it is rare indeed that we have the privilege of an accomplished politician and an accomplished businessman. Let's do one more hand for John Corzine. I'm Ruthie Byrne. John was excessively generous in his comments, but now I have the privilege of taking questions. I will say there are questions from students, please, and we're going to give John the option of denying any question he really doesn't want to answer. So
I thought that's what all politicians do.
he could punt, to use a phrase. So we have Matt there. Take a look. Matt Dickovics has got a microphone. If you would like to ask a question, please raise your hand. Matt will run over with the mic. Who's got the first question? Yes, ma'am.
Which of your characteristics do you think has helped you most over the span of your career?
Stubbornness. No. I think that someplace along the line, I identified the purposes that I thought were important in life. I think I've tried to live those purposes. My parents were strong values builders that gave me strength in those lines. Faith has something to do with that. And I think those characteristics both give you strength when you're doing well, but they really give you strength when things are not going as well as you would want. And as life will have it, there are bumps in the road. So I think that's probably the most important. And I was blessed with good people to help me frame those and learn those purposes and values.
Good answer. I like that. I'm going to use that. Okay. Anyone else? Let's see. Yeah. Yes, sir.
What was your single most valuable experience you learned while working at Goldman Sachs?
Hiring Fisher Black was a good one. He was really able. Now, the Goldman Sachs experience at the end of the day was about good teamwork, a team doing really good things. It's more than a shibboleth to say that nobody does anything in life by themselves. If you have the ability to work with other people to get the best, it's better to hire smarter people than you. It's better to have a relationship with the people that you work with in a way that you come together and get really good things. I fumbled the papers. I'm not so good at this speech making anymore. I had an anecdote I was going to tell about Goldman Sachs when I was talking about ambition. It's called Community Teamworks. One of the reasons we were thought of as a great place to work, still is thought of as a great place to work, was that we got out into the community. We put together teams of people, bosses and trainees, young and old, sent them out, told them they had a week's project to put together. Usually came out of a division. And people felt really good because they got to identify fully up and down what the team was. And the purpose was something other than just making money or being successful at what you do. And so I'm just a total believer that if you can join hands with people on things that you care about and think you can make a difference with, it'll happen if you do it with more than just yourself.
Okay, next question. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Hamza, and my question is, what were some of your favorite courses in college?
My favorite courses? I've always liked politics. It wasn't very helpful in my business career always, but political science was great. And, it's interesting how time goes on. I talked about 7 decades. I got to go like this till I look in the mirror, and then I know it's true. But we read a textbook in 1968 or 69 written by Henry Kissinger. This is before he became Mr. Big in international affairs. And I can remember it being one of the more challenging pieces. And now I read some of the things he read. He just wrote a book about power about 2 years ago, and I felt like I was back in that same time frame. It was exciting then, it's exciting now. And so I love reading about the world as it is, how I want it to be, and what we need to do to try to get it there. And that was what I really loved in college. College was fun, though. I had a good time.
I'm not going to ask for a show of hands on that one. Next question. Yes, ma'am, in the back. Oh, sorry. This gentleman right here. Wait, you're next. Okay. Yes, sir.
My name is Carmelo, and my question is, a central theme at the Paris climate talks has been the significant reduction in global reliance on fossil fuels in the near future. How do you see this impacting the global economy?
Well, there's short run and long run. There is no question that the transition from fossil fuels to a more clean energy portfolio has its costs, sometimes in uneven ways. Wind power and solar power, great for California. Coal being reduced is not so good for West Virginia. So how it impacts the economy has something to do from where you're seated. It is and I'm one of these believers that we have to address this. We have to take it on, and we've made progress. If you look at the Paris conference versus the Copenhagen conference, there are huge elements of movement and embracing of dealing with the issue, but we're not there. I think there are great opportunities, economic opportunities in the transition. For the life of me, I can't convince my Republican colleagues to do cap and trade, which will turn into a serious economic phenomenon where the cost and the reduction of costs by those that make real efforts along these lines are really important. And it's a complicated issue. The United States is going to end up with a bigger bill in making this work than China is going to end up with, or other places that are underdeveloped. But you know what? We didn't have that bill when we built our economic engine, and so we got a break at a different point in history. So it's the unevenness of the economics that I think is probably the most complicated part of this, but I don't think the science has much reason to be challenged.
Yes, back there.
Hi, my name is Yana. As a politician and a businessman myself, I was wondering, what do you think about the presidential debates?
What do I think about the presidential race?
Debates.
Debates. That's better. One of the things that I promised myself and told others that I wouldn't do is get into commenting on political candidacies and political events and current environment. But on the debates, we can all raise hell. I think that, and we said this at dinner with a group of folks before talking, is there was real weakness in the structure of these debates, turning the debates in a very unfair way, as far as I'm concerned, into a reality show has been not good. It's great that we've got a lot of people watching, but I don't think the quality of the debate, not really because of the individuals. I think that's been more the media's problem. Asking Sheldon why his shirt is a little bit unbuttoned, or I don't comb my hair the way it looks good, or whether somebody's ugly or not, doesn't strike me as what we ought to be talking about the next president of the United States, who's going to have to deal with incredible issues on national security, incredible issues like climate change, incredible issues about how we educate our kids. And we ought to stay focused on the fundamental things that matter in people's lives. And I don't think those debates are doing it.
Yes, someone back there. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Jacqueline. What made you decide to go into politics?
Well, I see one of the state senators walk in, Ray Lesniak. What did make me go into politics, Raymond? Yeah, you twisted my arm. Anyway, this I don't want to be repetitive. I have been blessed in my life with great opportunities, and great opportunities to do more than just serve myself. And when you look around about where you can change the world, where you get the greatest leverage, to help other people, to make a difference. And there's always going to be arguments about how that should be done. That's what politics is about too. But public service is a place where you can make a difference in people's lives. How we educate our kids. You know, if we have early childhood education, quality early childhood education, across the board, we'll start narrowing income equality gaps. If we have a criminal justice system that treats people fairly, we'll have a lot less of the kind of conflicts that we see in our cities and the pain that brings to society. So it's just that if you want to make a difference in how the world works for other people's lives, that's where it's at, baby. It's good.
Yes, ma'am. Matt, are you here? Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Back there. You're next. Okay.
Okay, I'm Olivia. What advice would you give to your 20-year-old self?
To my 20-year-old self. Learn how to give a speech. Now, I think, what would I do? You know, it's really hard when you get to be as old as I am. You want to hang on to the things that you like about what you did. I'm not sure that I wouldn't have wanted to enter into public service earlier so that I could have done more get your hands dirty work. Maybe I should have gone into the Peace Corps, for instance, right out of college. There were a number of things that I think could have enhanced what's really been a wonderful experience, those 70 years. But there are ways to have made it more powerful and more personal that I could have taken on earlier in my life. I don't know whether that addresses it. I could have met my wife a lot earlier. We've been married 5 years, so.
And I think we have time for one more.
Hi, my name is Brian Moody. I was just wondering, how do you think that the Chinese recession will affect the international economy as well as the United States interest rates?
China's recession? Okay. Well, first of all, and I'm not trying to be a know-it-all, but I think their economy is growing at about 6 or 6.5%. You know, the critics would say it's 4 or 5 because they don't measure well. The Chinese are claiming it's 7%, but I don't think they're in recession. The problem is they've gone from growing at 13, 14% to much slower rates, and as a consequence, they're not importing mostly commodities, things that Brazil and other parts of the emerging market world produce or give in trade to the Chinese, and therefore they're not doing so well, and some of them are in deep recession like Brazil, and that impacts what goes on here. I think the Chinese are in a major transition. I'm more optimistic about China. I spend a lot of time thinking about it in my family office and some investments that I'd like to make. They're in this great transition from going from a pure production economy, manufacturing economy, to one that's far more balanced. As you probably know, the United States' economy is 70% services and consumption, maybe even a little bit more. We're only about 12% manufacturing. China's about 55, maybe even 60% manufacturing, and consumption is a very, very small part, and they're in some stage of the transition of maturing into that, and that's going to be a slow process. I mean, it can't be done overnight. And kind of like the question on climate change, it's going to have uneven impacts around the world. Some places are going to benefit, and other places are going to really suffer. And some of those places where the demand for the raw materials, which is kind of falsely based, are going to really suffer. It's an interesting question, but they're going to do okay. They, like us, have a continental economy. They have a great culture that's thousands of years old, and they educate their kids pretty well. And, they're going to be formidable, both competitors and trading partners with the United States, all of your lifetime and beyond.
Matt, did you say we've run out of time? We have. Okay, so once again,
Thank you all for coming. Really terrific to be here.
Governor, a small token of our appreciation. Thank you so
very
much.
much.
It's for you. Thank you.
Appreciate it.